For the last 2 years, the Milwaukee PBS podcast, Speaking Of, has brought you stories.
Stories about people from throughout Wisconsin, making space for perspective and reflection.
But as we were looking for stories for season 2.
And so that was the moment where I was just like, okay, this is starting to get a little scary.
It was hard to ignore a growing crisis around us.
As violent crime rises in Milwaukee, domestic violence is claiming more lives as well.
To our newsroom tonight, Milwaukee police say domestic abuse is behind a homicide this morning.
100 domestic violence victims in Wisconsin were killed last year.
Domestic violence is a root cause of a significant amount of violence in our city.
Milwaukee police are calling a domestic violence-related murder-suicide.
Within 10 seconds from that conversation, I was on the floor in the corner, balled up in a fetal position. I'm like, my life is in this man's hands.
The crisis of domestic violence.
How many times were you reaching out for help?
I would say probably more than 10 times.
Unprecedented numbers of people, mainly women, losing their lives.
We're in the midst of a crisis.
I was like, oh my gosh, he was shot. I just collapsed and everything was like a blur after that. I was like on autopilot for the next couple of weeks.
That's how you found out you were on the scene and you overheard a news anchor.
Yes. I didn't even know. They was like, she was shot, she was burned.
We know who we lose and we don't know who we save. I still have to believe that it's worth it. I still have to believe that I'm making a difference.
Now with funding cuts on the horizon.
Wisconsin is looking at about a 70% decline in this funding. And so we are seeing really a dire picture.
There are some programs that will not exist because of these impending cuts.
And a system still working to recover from the side effects of a global pandemic.
Under COVID, everything broke down significantly.
We take a deep dive on how we got here and what is being done to save lives and restore peace.
Domestic violence homicide is one of the most preventable types of crime. It requires, frankly, a lot of coordination between systems that often don't talk to each other.
The program isn't just about domestic violence. It isn't just about anger management. It isn't just about abuses or any of that. It's really about digging deep inside of yourself.
How would you assess the effectiveness and the job performance of the Milwaukee Police Department and the DA's office in all this?
I call it the luck of the draw.
We're your hosts, Alexandria Mack
and Scottie Meyers.
This is The Missing Piece,
a Speaking Of podcast by Milwaukee PBS,
with reporting supported by the International Women's Media Foundation.
What does justice look like to you?
In this case, I really wouldn't know.
If you were to name this podcast, what are some names that come to you?
I would say this, The Missing Piece, but called Peace, P-E-A-C-E.
The Missing Piece will be available in February wherever you get your podcasts.